What are some of the most chaotic gameplay visuals you've seen in a gacha game? Well, I didn't know what true insanity looked like until I played CounterSide. After unsuccessfully trying out Epic 7, I realized that I wanted to play a gacha game that didn't have as much stake in character builds, but one that felt familiar. In comes CounterSide. Originally often referred to as Epic 7 with quality of life, CounterSide offers a more casual and streamlined experience with a side-scrolling tower defense gameplay loop. Lately, this game hasn't been doing too hot, and while I try not to be too biased in these reviews anymore, I'll also shed some light on why this may be the case. My name is Psyche, and today I will be dissecting CounterSide of its gameplay, gacha, presentation, and some others, ultimately answering the question, is it any good? The original CounterSide has been released for quite a while actually, since 2020. It was developed by Nexon, and the global port is handled by Studio B-Side, which I'm pretty sure is just a subsidiary of a smaller team assigned to publish this version. This game was pretty talked about within the gacha community when it first released, having received praise for its high-quality animations and world building. Many drew comparisons to the presentation of Epic 7, which came a few years before that and re-evaluated the standard when it came to its production value. In 2018, Epic 7 was considered the best-looking gacha game for its time. These days, it's definitely kept up with the rapidly moving industry, though it's curious why Epic 7 was able to keep up its momentum, yet CounterSide seems to only appeal to a much smaller audience over the years. Before I even get into the review, I just want to say that this review would have been on Epic 7. I was originally prepared to play it for many months in order to understand the intricacies of one of its most standout modes, Real-Time Arena. This is exactly as the game suggests. You will do PvP with another player in real time. And while there are absolutely players that play PvE only, not covering RTA in a review will immediately cause some players to claim that the review is invalid. PvP has such a big focus on Epic 7 that not understanding it will cause someone to miss out on a lot of online memes and references. I wasn't really joking when there are many similarities, because throughout this review, I'm going to be referencing Epic 7 quite a lot, and ultimately, while this is still a CounterSide video, I want to explore where I come from as a casual player and why I decided to settle for CounterSide instead. There isn't much to dig up regarding Studio B-Side, the devs behind the global port, but looking back on its history, there is one major event that shook up the game, arguably for the worse. I know we all love a little bit of drama, so let's talk about it. The Origin update, as it's called, happened to global in early February last year. This was considered to be a wildly controversial patch that upset a lot of players. I probably don't understand all the changes that it did over the years, but the main points of the update is that it made the game less free-to-play friendly, nerfing the amount of rewards and progress for players. While there was an apology post addressing the concerns and rolling back some of the changes, the damage was already done. The Origin update, having revamped its UI to what it is now, and while it did do some other positive things, some people felt that the game was shifting towards a whale-centric audience to make up for the middling amount of revenue that the game generates. I can understand their desire to save the game. Every live service, not just gacha games, needs to have free-to-play players for whales to whale over. Since CounterSide has strong ties to PvP content, it is essential for free-to-plays to also be part of a competitive environment. If they leave, then the whales will start to leave because there's no one for them to beat. It's a delicate balance for sure, but I thought this was worth noting. So what's CounterSide about? Well, at this point I'm pretty used to the whole post-apocalyptic sci-fi theme with super soldiers, but there are some differences. The world is split into two dimensions of sorts. The normal side, where humans reside, and the counter side, which is a mostly unexplored realm where dangerous mutants called corrupted objects reside, but also containing Eternium, a highly valuable ore that fuels many of humanity's technologies. At times, the counterside can bleed into the normal human realm in a phenomenon called the counterside effect, unleashing corrupted objects of varying levels of destruction. Those that fight it have innate superhuman abilities that are able to traverse within the counterside with ease. You would think that just like other sci-fi apocalyptic themed worlds we've seen, all that separates a counter from a normal human is a watch they wear that tracks something called the counter reality force. CRF will slowly count down to 0, in which the counter themselves will also start to become corrupted. There are ways to mitigate it, but it's a trade-off for using their abilities. Now, it's worth mentioning that counters are not the only allied faction that can fight corrupted objects. There are also soldiers and machines. Both of them are smaller factions within the game that you can collect. Squad Fenrir, composed of Hilda and Shiyun as its members, recruit the rookie counter Mina, as she joins them to learn about the unforgiving world of CounterSide. At first, I felt that the main cast focused on these three characters primarily, even though the game has you create your own character. You're just kinda like this hidden mastermind in the background, which I thought was kinda cool. Usually with these genres of games that I typically don't play, I try to break down the gameplay and your goals to its absolute minimum. In CounterSide, you form a team of up to a whopping 8 characters, a ship and an operator. I was at first stuck on how to start a level as the game didn't let me, and then I realized that the ship selection screen is hidden away in this area with the outline of it faded into the background. The ship comes with its own skills, and the operator gives a buff whenever you deploy characters in certain classes consecutively. You lose when your ship runs out of health, and you win by either surviving the determined amount of waves or by destroying the enemy ship. Your costs will gradually increase every second, and every unit has their own cost associated with it. You can't control each individual character once they've been deployed, but you can redeploy them anywhere you want. Same goes if they go down during a fight, you just have to wait to send them out again. They have their own skills, and an ultimate that you can activate too. Your ship can also help you out with skills of its own on a cooldown. This style of 2D side-scrolling tower defense is kinda similar to Battle Cats, but usually flashier with more stuff happening at once. This is actually brought up as one of the main criticisms about CounterSide. When you get to late game content, even if you know the ins and outs of combat, just ask yourself, what is happening on the screen right now? There's so many things to track, so many buttons to press. In an absolute nutshell, you want your units to be alive, because if an ally is not on the field, then you don't get value out of them. While most of the units you pull are counters, there are actually smaller subcategories of units for the machines and generic soldiers. They do offer certain perks like tankiness or sheer numbers, and you can make a team out of them, but this is a gacha game. Who wants to play with mechs when you have waifus and husbandos? There is an element system, kind of, where a class will deal and take less damage from another. This is just another game of rock, paper, scissors. Strikers beat rangers, who beat defenders, who beat snipers, who beat strikers. Some enemies are also flying, so you still have to bring some units that can take care of that. Your sword users are kinda sitting ducks here, though the majority of enemies are ground units. The available units are displayed for deployment in the order that you place them in, so the 8 slots here actually kinda matters. This also plays into how auto mode works. You can toggle between auto use of each unit's ult skill, and the order that they're deployed onto the field is from right to left, and you can even see which unit is coming up next. Once a unit is deployed, you can't individually control them. I mean, even if you could, good luck managing that. If a unit is down, you can just simply deploy them again, obviously still resulting in lost value. And even if they're still alive, you can redeploy them anyways for better repositioning. This may seem like your usual chaotic gameplay loop by piling on strong operators. It took me a while to figure out how the flow of gameplay worked, like who to deploy first and so on. The true complexity of CounterSide comes with its gearing and team building. When I saw the complex webs of stats and armor sets, I knew I was in for a ride. There are 2 approaches you can take in CounterSide. You can either go the PvE route or PvP. As you know, following behind its predecessor Epic 7, CounterSide also wanted a slice of that PvP pie. There are asynchronous and real-time arena modes that I'll talk about later. Gearing and upgrade priority, as you might imagine, will differ quite a bit depending on which route you decide to go down. As a content creator, I try to dip my toes into what PvP looks like, but this review will mostly cover PvE content. CounterSide's gameplay is fine. It's different enough from the previous games I've reviewed, but one demerit from the 8-party system is that it's harder to tell who's contributing how much in a team, especially when it comes to new players trying to learn the ropes. If a team only consists of 3 characters, for example, then it's way easier to know what unit does what, and how they contribute to your total success. Not really a big deal if you're drawn in by the story, or are just interested in figuring out team building, but we'll just move on for now. Let's talk about account progression. Again, your experience will greatly differ from mine if you focus on the PvP aspect, but I'll treat CounterSide as almost every other casual gacha game I reviewed so far. Character rarity ranges from 3 to 5 stars. The lower rarities do exist, but let's be honest here, you're not going to use them. After doing some digging, I also realized that the vast majority of 3, 4, and at times even 5 stars all just kinda not that good. I know a game like this is prone to power creep, but even pulling a SSR didn't really excite me, because I just think, well, I'm definitely not using this. Why would I sink my resources into a crappy unit when a better one might be waiting down the line? But hey, I'm ready for the barrages of "you just don't understand how to use them" comments. I understand that raw numbers are rarely what's considered powerful or not, and I'm sure there are a lot of ways to clear content without meta characters. Don't let my rambling make the game look bad. Anyways, you will level your units using these appraisal files, and the level up process is called salary negotiation, so I thought that was pretty neat. They all have their set of skills that you can level, though the skill level cap is increased whenever you perform a limit break, which is done using these cube things. Each unit has a set of slots for gear, though the fourth and final slot is not unlocked until you reach max limit break with that character. Kind of a bummer, but whatever. The gearing system is weird to figure out. There are many avenues in which you can get them, and mixing and matching the set bonuses will be any late game player's nightmare. You can reroll the sets and the substats, as most good gear are only in limited quantities, so at least when you eventually progress later, it's more about trying to farm these binary things to fish for the stats you want rather than keep farming new ones. You can level a unit past level 100 by breaking the level cap even more using this fusion crystal thing. If the level reaches 110, a few select units in the game can undergo something called the rearmament system, where their level resets but their maximum potential is increased. I never got around to this, but you do get a new sprite and a new look for that character. Even if the rearm upgrade is good, that is still a very big amount of investment to pay for it. Aside from limit breaks, there is also a dupe system where pulling additional copies of a unit can enhance them even more. This is all fairly cookie-cutter stuff for gacha game progression, but one thing you gotta keep in mind, a full squad consists of 8 total members, so you're gonna be working on those upgrades for a while for a solid team. Not to mention, when you get to raid content, a full raid team consists of a staggering 16 units to fill. Yeah, it's gonna be a long road ahead. So how do you get these upgrade materials? Well, you can run through levels using the stamina currency Eternium, which accumulates in the thousands mark, so not even I know the exact time for a full refill. You can refill it manually by spending quartz, the premium gacha currency, and look, you can even watch an ad for a freebie refill too. Now that's the true mobile game experience.
Let's play Raid Shadow Legends.
You spend Eternium playing the main story, sub-stories, and the resource farming stages. Story content also handles itself similarly to Epic 7, in the sense that every sub-story arc has its own currency that can be used to buy from materials in the shop. I have heard that some of the sub-stories are pretty good, and there's even a timeline that shows the history of events and where each story takes place. The sweep function exists here too, and while I can't prove it, I'm not sure if it works the same way as Epic 7, in the sense that if you're not a great deal above the recommended power level, some of your sweep attempts could actually fail, since the game runs a simulation of you going through the level to see if you beat it. It doesn't seem to be the case here, so you can sweep as much as you like. Just the way I like it. There are these extra stages where you can earn a premium amount of upgrade materials, but only 2 access keys are given to you every day. You can upgrade your ship by limit breaking it with ship resources, and your operator can even merge their skills with another for an upgraded one. My only gripe with progression is that given that there's 8 slots in the ship as well as the operator that you have to level, that is a lot of stuff to keep track of and maintain. It's not that getting the upgrade stuff is hard, as the game gives out quite a lot of freebie Eternium, but it's gonna be a long way before you have a truly competitive team. The gacha system. This is where I will spend some time talking about. CounterSide also sort of copied Epic 7's gacha with some minor tweaks. The base chance for an SSR is 3.5%, which at first seems pretty high, until you learn that the raid up chance is 1%, so only a small fraction of that 3.5. This is because Epic 7's SSR rate is 1% entirely, but you can't get spooked, as the raid up character is the only one in the pool. So while you do get more 5 stars on average, the chance to get the one you want is still exactly the same. Something else I should mention is that there's no 4-star guarantee for every 10 pulls. You might just get 10 useless rares in a row, and even then, the vast majority of 4 stars are kinda just not that good as well. The pity is 150 pulls. It does not carry over across other ongoing banners nor the next one. Since 1 pull on the slot machine costs 150 quartz, that's 22,500 quartz for a guaranteed spark. A lot of Korean gachas don't have pity carryover, so I'm not that surprised it's not there. There is a separate gacha banner for operators. The rate for an SSR operator is 2%, but the rate up stays at 1%, so now it is a true coin flip, with the same pity system. I wanted to get a copy of Kim Hana here, as I heard she's pretty good. Well, 100 pulls in, no Hana in sight, and I got spooked in the process. Guess it just wasn't meant to be. Ah well. Now, if that were the entire gacha system, I wouldn't have had much problems with it. But unfortunately, CounterSide also chose to copy one of Epic 7's most infamous types of gacha banners. Introducing the Awakened SSRs. The ASSRs, as they're called, belong to a special pool of characters. There aren't a lot of them, but they're seen as the more exclusive class that's more premium and rare. The majority of them are very powerful and highly desirable to obtain. So how do you get these ASSRs? Well, they have their own gacha banners, known as classified recruitment. Except you don't use quartz to roll on this banner. You have to use its own currency for 20 units of pull. And how do you get this currency? Well, you can exchange some quartz for it every week, but you're limited to one instance of this exchange. Most players will highly recommend purchasing this pack weekly, as this is one of the few precious ways to get the currency to pull on the banner. Other than that, the game will drip feed a bit of it to you every now and then, and you can also buy it with real money. But that's pretty much it. Your supply of this is extremely limited as a free-to-play. The rates are the same as the normal banners, 3.5% for an SSR, 1% rate up. You would think that if you get spooked, at least you get a random ASSR, which is still good. But no, you're not getting off that easily. If you miss the 1%, you get spooked by a regular SSR instead. One silver lining is that the pity does carry over to other Awakened banners though, unlike normal recruitment for whatever reason. The ASSR system is very similar to Epic 7's Moonlight Summoning Pool, where there's a group of characters that are deemed very powerful, but those units cannot be summoned outside of this pool. The free Moonlight pulls are given to you, but also not very plentiful. I can't exactly say I'm a fan of this exclusive summon system. I mean, what reasoning is there for this thing to exist? It just feels needlessly convoluted to have an extra layer of payment or waiting that you have to do to get access to some of the coolest and most powerful characters in the game. You can't save for the character you want as a free-to-play. You mostly have to rely on the drip-fed currency that the game controls. Learning about the classified summon banners is also when I realized an unfortunate truth regarding gacha games. When I looked up how to get an ASSR, I saw results where players were able to get a selector for it. I thought, that's pretty generous. So many of the well-designed and powerful units are ASSRs. I would love to get one. That would greatly help out my account progression. So how do I get the selector? Well, as it turns out, the selector is only available during certain major events like anniversaries. This means a player's perception of a game can be skewed if they received special treatment because they happen to join at an opportune time. I did not. I missed the 1.5 global anniversary by about a month when it was given out. I did my best to buy the weekly recruitment pack with quartz and pulled on what I could, but aside from Hilda, who is given to everyone for beating Chapter 5, I don't have a single ASSR on my account. After getting Awakened Hilda, you also get access to a paid bundle of around $20-something for a guaranteed ASSR from a small pool. Except Hilda is on the list, so if you blew any money on this just to get Hilda again, that would be pretty bad. Speaking of which, let's talk about monetization now. We'll start with the stuff that I think is mostly okay. There's the $5 welcome pack that gives admin coins, which is the real money currency that lets you convert it to quartz or buy other things. The battle pass, pretty standard stuff. One thing I will mention is that the reward for the premium track is not a skin or anything, but it's an actual character that you can use. Now, if you head into the cash shop, the admin coin is the currency you use to buy the different packs, because obviously listing everything in dollars is just too simple. Again, most of the stuff you see in gacha game shops are whale bait, so I mostly just ignore them. There are a couple of outlier details that I want to talk about though. CounterSide also does paid skins. For the non-CounterSide viewers out there, if I showed you this skin with its live 2D animation, can you take a guess how much they're charging for this? When I saw the price tag, I thought to myself, the in-game sprites are fairly decent I guess, but I can't see them selling this for more than 10 bucks a pop. I genuinely could not see them trying to pass this off for more than that. Looking into it, the total amount of dollars will range between $10 to almost $20. I probably don't need to do much arguing to suggest that this quality of a skin is no longer good value for what we have today. You gotta step up your game, there's competition these days. Have you seen Path to Nowhere with Reverse 1999's art? I'll probably have to bring out this argument every now and then, but if we were to compare this in terms of value, look at Snowbreak's interactive $20 skins. You just get so much more out of that. I'm not discouraging CounterSide fans from buying skins for their favorite operatives. I'm saying that I don't think skins of this degree is worth it in almost any gacha game. That said, there is a tab where the skin is a gender-bent version of a male character, so I mean, at least this one provides a lot more substance in case if you're into that kind of stuff. On the side of the current event section, you will also see some sets of missions that you can do for extra rewards. Well, my hopes were dashed when I found out that in order to complete these tasks to get the rewards, you need to own the current rate-up ASSR character. I've seen something a bit similar in Brown Dust 2, but you just have to own the character for a bit of extra pulse. Here though, there is entire sections of content that you can clear to get an additional set of gear and everything. It's like dangling this carrot in front of you to nudge you to pull on the exclusive characters that they have gimped the rates for. Like, this is just evil. The game luckily gives you quite a number of SSR selectors, and while I would normally praise Studio B-Side for their generosity, the selector only gives a very small pool of SSRs that you can pick from. I shouldn't be too critical of this since it's better than nothing, though I also can't really praise it due to only having a very select few of these SSRs actually being of much use to a new player. Again, this is using my very much limited knowledge of the game. I don't want to discredit anything here in the end, as I'm sure someone more knowledgeable can make a decent argument that any unit can be good given the right circumstances. I think CounterSide has a fairly generous gacha when it comes to its pure rates. It's easy to get a SSR, but it's just not that easy to get the one you want. Before critiquing the presentation, I need to restate that Nexon originally made this game. Being one of the biggest developers in Korea, it shouldn't be unfair to assume that budget is not an issue. Well, while something like this can look fairly decent for today's standards, back in 2018, sprite art in Live 2D like this would have been considered high quality. The details and visuals in combat though, it's quite clear that ASSRs get the special treatment of having more and better animations. That is, if you're able to keep track of what's happening on the screen through all the flashing lights and explosions. The main story, unfortunately, is not voiced. The intro section is voiced, so that kinda got my hopes up, but no, none of the story content past that is. I don't think it would have been impossible for a developer of this scale to add it, but it's just how it's gonna be. I also quite enjoyed the character variety, as the game also puts mechs and soldiers into the game for you to collect. You don't see a lot of games out there do this, so I think that's definitely still worthy of praise. The UI is generally intuitive and easy to follow. I mean, I've definitely seen worse out there, so that's not really a high bar to clear. Now, there are many game modes within CounterSide, but some of them are hidden in some places that a new player might have some trouble finding. I'll briefly go over what these modes are later, but the overall presentation is fairly decent. Nothing about it really jumps out, but it's kept up over the years. Late game content is one of the main aspects that CounterSide tries to focus on. There's a lot I can say when it comes to comparing its method to Epic 7. I'll talk about CounterSide's approach to PvP, but first, let's get the PvE stuff out of the way. There are the raids that can pop up whenever you complete your dailies. These are the ones mentioned previously that you can fit up to 16 total units to fight. I can't even begin to scratch the surface of this yet, but you get the idea. You can also request help from other players and jump in to help others too. Danger Close is the de facto PvE endgame. It's a seasonal boss rush mode that pits you against some encounters. This rotates every 2 weeks, and each season has slightly different restrictions that challenges your way of team building. In addition, there are multiple bosses per rotation, and you can't use the same character twice. I would say in terms of PvE content, it's there for the crowd that only wants it, because there is a ranking mode, but luckily it's mostly just there for bragging rights. And you can still use the respective currency to clear out the shop every season, even if you're not at the top. PvP is a whole different ballpark, and it's where a good portion of players spend their time competing. CounterSide, aside from its 2D side-scrolling tower defense style, also uses a lot of Epic 7's PvP methods. There are the asynchronous arenas where you build a defense and offense team to try and beat other players, and there is RTA. You battle another player in real time. There is a ranking and even a ban system. However, instead of banning your opponent from using a unit outright, the cost of that unit is raised instead. So while they can still use it, it's just way less efficient. Because of its chaotic gameplay sometimes, many players feel that Epic 7 still has an edge in the PvP department, as it's turn-based and there's a lot more visual clarity on what's going on. Now you might be wondering, if PvP is a big portion of the game's identity, doesn't that kinda make the game pay to win? I mean, if you have better gear, more limit-broken characters, more investments on your account, don't you just have a higher chance of winning by default? This is where a lot of discussion surrounding PvP in gacha games is worthy of a video of its own. PvP is usually just a small side mode where in most gachas that, while it's a playground for whales, it's completely optional and not in the way of the majority of content in the game. However, even then, Epic 7 players, and I imagine CounterSide players too, will argue that no, the PvP is not pay to win. Quite the opposite, these games are actually pretty free-to-play friendly. I tried out Epic 7 for a little bit, and I found that it's easier to get a team going that's competitive enough, so I think that argument is definitely true. I can't really attest to that in CounterSide though, but one aspect that it does differently is that PvP is not nearly as ingrained in the game's identity as Epic 7. The rewards and leaderboards don't mean much other than bragging rights. While this is still true in Epic 7, one major piece of content you have access to when you rank high is the currency needed to purchase exclusive skins. There is incentive to play PvP, because instead of locking premium skins behind paywalls, even a free-to-play can get them if they're good enough, or if they invest enough time, or just get a little lucky. So that's the late game content of CounterSide. It differs quite a bit from other games I've covered, but trying to break into the PvP market is always a unique take in my eyes. So the global version of CounterSide has been running for just over 1.5 years. There has been a number of reruns according to a spreadsheet of event timelines I found, so I mostly don't have any problems with exclusivity. The events and battle pass also follow month-long roadmaps, so you can get an idea of what's happening. There's new sub-story modes and new featured characters. Scheduling-wise, CounterSide is pretty standard, though there is one thing I would like to comment on. Ever since the introduction of ASSRs, the game has had a heavier incentive to release those instead of the regular 5-stars. Obviously, from the severely gimped pull income, players, especially free-to-plays, can't hope to get every one that releases. You have to shell out your wallet for it. Even if one new ASSR comes out every month, that's still not nearly enough resources to guarantee a copy. I really don't understand why this exclusive gacha banner exists at all. Aside from creating an artificial sense of scarcity, this makes the interesting and unfortunate reality that the developer has an incentive to purposefully lock the better design and more power-crept units behind this banner type. From a creative standpoint, I think it's just way better to put all SSRs on the same playing field to avoid giving special treatment and purposefully designing inferior characters instead. But anyways, this section is on events and content frequency, but that's just one final gripe I had with my experiences. So, CounterSide. A game that I hope to make a point about handling PvP content in gachas, features a chaotic but also admittedly unique approach to gameplay. I definitely had some fun learning about the lore and the different game modes, but I obviously will be lying if I said the game isn't without flaws. The gameplay, and by extension the PvP, can be pretty subjective depending on your tolerance of the amount of things happening on screen. The gacha is pretty generous by its base rates, but its low rate-up chance and the increasing reliance on ASSRs can still make it pretty hard to obtain your desired characters. The presentation has kept up with the expanding mobile game market. I feel as though CounterSide will still appeal to a small dedicated fanbase, but going from statistics and community sentiment, the game is nowhere near as big as it once was. Anyways, that's my middling review as a filthy casual. Let me know if you played CounterSide and what you thought of it. I'm hoping to get 1 or 2 more reviews out before the end of the year, since 2025 is going to be pretty stacked for new releases. If you enjoy gacha related content just like this, you know what to do. So as always, thank you for watching, and have fun out there.